They mocked the old mechanic for cleaning the wreck, until the ship powered up and spoke his name. John Carter was an old mechanic. He had worked on Luna Station for more than 40 years, and he knew machines better than most people knew themselves. His hands were rough and calloused, with scars from tools that slipped and parts that broke. He moved slowly now, not because he had lost his skill, but because age had caught up to him. The younger engineers often laughed at him. They called him Old John behind his back, thinking he was slow and stuck in the past. In the scrap bay of Luna Station, there was a wreck. It was a large, strange ship, half buried under dust and pieces of metal that had fallen from the ceiling over decades. No one knew where it came from or who built it. Some said it was alien, others said it might have been an old human project long forgotten. Whatever it was, it had been here for so long that most people believed it was useless. Engineers and technicians would glance at it as they passed, shake their heads, and move on. John did not. Every day when his shift ended, he would go to the wreck. He cleaned the outside panels, removed the dust, polished the edges, and sometimes replaced small broken parts with old tools he kept hidden in a drawer. He did not rush. He worked slowly, carefully, like a painter restoring an old canvas. The younger engineers thought he was wasting his time. "Why are you still working on that old thing?" one of them would ask, smirking. "It will never fly." John never answered. He just kept working. He had a routine. First, he would sweep the dust off the main access hatch. Then he would check the outer hull for cracks or rust. He kept a small toolkit with him, always prepared for any small repair. Sometimes he would speak quietly to the wreck, almost as if it could hear him. "Don't worry," he would say. "We'll get you working again. Just a little more time." Some people thought he was crazy, but John did not care. Lisa Morrow was a young technician who worked in the same bay. She was curious and kind, the opposite of most of the other engineers who were competitive and impatient. She often stopped to watch John work. Sometimes she asked questions, and John would answer, though not in great detail. He never wanted anyone to take over his project. "It is my responsibility," he would say quietly. "I understand it, others may not." The wreck itself was strange. Its shape did not match any modern ship. Its metal was dark, almost black, with strange symbols etched into the panels. The engines looked like nothing John had ever repaired before, though he could feel the familiar hum of old mechanics in the design. Even the docking bay computers could not recognize its systems. It was as if the wreck came from a time long before the current technology. John had spent years cleaning and repairing small parts. Sometimes he would find old circuits that had survived decades of dust and neglect. He carefully reconnected them, making tiny adjustments with steady hands. Slowly, over time, the wreck began to respond. Small lights flickered here and there, and sometimes the engines would hum faintly, though they could not move. Many nights when the station was quiet, John would sit next to the wreck, resting his back against the metal hull. He liked the silence. He liked the feeling of working on something forgotten by the world. "You and I," he whispered one evening, "we are alone, but we are not finished." Lisa, who often peeked from the doorway, never disturbed him. She had learned to respect his quiet work. The younger engineers were careless. They would laugh and mock John whenever they passed. "Still cleaning that piece of junk?" one shouted once. Another added, "Maybe it will talk to you if you beg hard enough." They did not understand. They had grown up with advanced AI and self-repairing ships. To them, a broken old wreck was meaningless. But John had something they did not: experience, patience, and respect for machines. One evening, the station announced a maintenance shutdown. Many engineers went home, leaving the scrap bay almost empty. John stayed. He knew that this was the best time to work without interruptions. He opened a small panel he had been repairing for weeks. Inside, he found circuits that were still intact but corroded. He cleaned them carefully with a soft brush and reconnected tiny wires. Sparks flew briefly, but John was ready. He adjusted the panel, and the small lights on the wreck blinked more strongly than ever. Lisa watched from a distance. She could not hide her excitement. "It's waking up," she whispered. "Do you feel it?" John nodded but said nothing. He had learned long ago not to speak until the work was complete. Sometimes machines spoke for themselves when the time was right. As the night went on, John continued working. His hands moved slowly but with precision. He cleaned more panels, replaced more wires, and adjusted control circuits that no one had touched for decades. Each time he fixed something, a small part of the wreck seemed to respond. A faint vibration would run through the hull or a tiny light would flicker. It was as if the ship was remembering itself. By midnight, most of the lights on the hull were faintly glowing. The wreck was no longer completely dark and silent. It had begun to respond to John's work. The other engineers would have said it was impossible, but John knew better. He had seen this happen before in other old ships, though never on something this mysterious. The station alarm rang briefly to indicate low power, but the wreck did not seem to care. It had its own systems, old and unknown to modern engineers. John continued to clean and repair using only his small tools and his hands. He moved slowly, carefully, never rushing. Each movement was deliberate, each adjustment precise. The ship was old, fragile, and needed respect, not force. At one point, Lisa stepped closer. "John," she said softly, "do you really think it will work?" He paused, looking at the glowing panels. "I do not know," he said simply, "but I know it can." "That is enough," she nodded, unsure if she really understood, but she felt the quiet confidence in his words. Hours passed, and the station grew quieter. Most of the other engineers had gone home. John worked alone, focused entirely on the wreck. His back ached, his hands were tired, and his eyes were strained from the dim lights. But he did not stop. He had learned long ago that patience and care often mattered more than speed or strength. By early morning, the wreck was shining faintly in the dim light of the station. Small panels glowed, and strange symbols on the hull flickered faintly. John wiped his forehead and smiled faintly. For the first time in decades, it seemed as if the wreck was acknowledging his work. It had survived, waiting for someone who cared enough to bring it back to life. Lisa watched silently, amazed. "I've never seen anyone like you," she said. John shrugged. "I am just someone who does not give up," he replied. "Machines have memories, people forget that." He ran his hands over the hull one more time, feeling the vibration beneath his fingers. It was subtle, almost like a heartbeat, but it was real. No one in the station expected anything from the wreck. To everyone else, it was just a pile of old metal, but John knew better. He had spent decades learning the language of machines, listening to their quiet signals and respecting their limits. This ship had been waiting for someone like him, and now, slowly, it was waking up. Outside the bay, the first sunlight of the station's orbit touched the metal hull. The wreck gleamed faintly, almost as if it were alive. John stepped back, tired but satisfied. He had done what no one else dared. He had cared for something forgotten. And in doing so, he had begun a story that no one could yet imagine. For John, the work was never about fame or recognition. It was about understanding, patience, and respect. And now, as the ship began to respond, he felt a quiet hope stirring in his chest. Perhaps the wreck would not only survive but remember. Perhaps it would speak. And when it did, John would be ready. The next morning, John Carter arrived at the scrap bay earlier than usual. The wreck sat quietly under the soft light of the station, its faint glow from the previous night now dimmed. He carried his small toolkit and a cloth to wipe dust off the panels. The quiet hum from inside the ship was stronger than yesterday, almost like it was breathing. John smiled. This was a good sign. He did not rush. He never rushed. Machines had their own rhythm, and he had learned to listen carefully. He ran his hands along the hull, feeling for vibrations. The ship felt alive under his fingers, subtle and steady, though no one else would have noticed. He checked each panel, each seam, and each tiny bolt. Some were loose, some were barely holding. He tightened what he could and left the fragile parts untouched, careful not to force anything. Lisa Morrow appeared at the doorway again. She had a notebook in her hands, filled with sketches and notes she had taken secretly. "Good morning, John," she said softly. "I stayed up last night thinking about what you did. Do you think it can really move?" John shook his head slightly. "I do not know if it can move," he said, "but I know it can respond. That is enough for now." Lisa stepped closer, careful not to disturb anything. She watched as John opened another panel, revealing a tangle of circuits that looked like nothing she had ever seen. The metal was old, scratched, and delicate. John carefully cleaned each wire with a soft brush, reconnecting some that had come loose over the decades. Sparks flew briefly, but John remained calm. He had worked on older, more fragile machines before, and he knew the difference between danger and progress. "You know," Lisa said quietly, "I've never seen anyone treat a machine like this before." "Most people just throw them away," John glanced at her. "Most people see only what is broken. They do not see what can be fixed. Machines remember care if someone knows how to give it." As the day went on, John continued to work. The station was busy with other engineers repairing newer ships, but none of them paid much attention to the wreck. Some sneered as they passed by, muttering about John wasting time. He ignored them. He had learned long ago that patience and quiet effort mattered more than opinion. Around midday, something strange happened. A small panel that John had carefully cleaned flickered with a blue light. He froze and listened. There was a soft hum coming from deep inside the wreck, almost like a heartbeat. It was faint but unmistakable. John's hands trembled slightly with excitement. This was the first real sign that the ship was responding to his work. Lisa gasped softly. "Did you see that?" she whispered. John nodded. "Yes, but do not get excited yet. It is only the beginning." He worked slowly, reconnecting circuits and adjusting tiny components. Every adjustment made the lights flicker more strongly. Sometimes a soft vibration ran through the hull. It was subtle, but it was there. By mid-afternoon, John had opened more panels than ever before. He cleaned old corrosion, tightened bolts, and replaced wires that were completely dead. The wreck began to make soft mechanical sounds. It was not loud, but it was alive. John smiled quietly. This was what he had waited for. He had spent years caring for this ship, and now it was finally responding. "You think it remembers anything?" Lisa asked. "From before it was buried." John paused. "Maybe," he said slowly. "Machines have memory too, just like people. If someone cared for it once, it might remember that too, and now it knows that someone cares again." The day turned into evening. The lights of the station shifted as Luna Station rotated in orbit. Most engineers left for the night, leaving John and Lisa alone in the scrap bay. John wiped his hands on a cloth and looked at the wreck. It seemed to glow more now, the panels shining faintly, almost as if it was breathing. He reached out and touched a control panel. A soft vibration ran through his fingers. Suddenly, a faint voice echoed through the bay. It was mechanical but calm. "John Carter," it said. The voice startled Lisa. She stumbled back, her notebook falling to the floor. John did not move. He closed his eyes for a moment and smiled quietly. "It remembers me," he whispered. The ship's lights grew brighter and more panels began to glow. The hum became stronger, like a machine waking after a long sleep. John moved carefully, touching wires and adjusting panels. The voice spoke again, repeating his name. "John Carter." It was clear, precise, and calm. Lisa looked at him with wide eyes. "It spoke your name," she said softly. John nodded. "It recognizes who I am. That is why it responds to me." He turned back to the ship and worked more carefully than before. Every movement was deliberate, every adjustment precise. The wreck was not just a machine. It was alive in its own way, and it trusted him. The station lights dimmed as the night cycle began. John worked for hours without pause. Lisa watched in awe. She had never seen anything like this. The wreck was old, older than any ship she had ever known, but it responded to care and patience. Its systems were ancient, unknown to modern engineers, but John understood them in a way that no one else could. At one point, a strange panel opened on its own. Lights inside blinked in a pattern that looked almost like writing. John studied it carefully, noting the shapes and symbols. They were not human, at least not modern human, but he could sense a logic in them. He touched the panel and the lights flickered faster. The hum grew louder, filling the bay with a quiet energy. Lisa whispered, "It's like it is trying to communicate." John nodded slowly. "Yes, but we must be patient. Machines speak in their own time. We cannot rush them." Hours passed, and the wreck seemed to grow more alive. Lights blinked in sequences, soft vibrations ran through the hull, and the voice repeated his name occasionally. John continued to clean, adjust, and repair. He worked carefully, knowing that every small action mattered. Suddenly, a small screen inside the wreck lit up, showing strange symbols and lines. John leaned closer. He could not read the symbols, but he could feel the meaning behind them. The ship was awakening, slowly remembering its purpose. He touched the screen lightly, and the ship responded with a soft glow and another vibration. Lisa was amazed. "Do you think it can move?" she asked. John shook his head slightly. "I do not know. That is not important yet. Right now it is alive. That is what matters." The night grew deeper and the station was quiet. John and Lisa continued their work, carefully cleaning and adjusting parts of the wreck. Occasionally, the voice spoke, calling John's name. It was not loud, but it was clear. The wreck recognized him, trusted him, and responded to him. By early morning, after hours of careful work, the wreck's lights were steady and strong. Panels glowed with soft energy, and the hum of machinery filled the bay. John stepped back, exhausted but satisfied. He had brought life back to something forgotten, something old and mysterious. Lisa looked at him in awe. "I can't believe it," she whispered. "You did this." John smiled faintly. "I did not do it alone, the ship did it too. It just needed someone who cared enough to help it remember." They sat quietly for a moment, watching the wreck. It was alive now in a way that no one else could see. The lights blinked softly, the panels vibrated, and the voice repeated his name once more. John knew that this was only the beginning. The wreck was waking, slowly and carefully. It remembered someone from the past, and now it had found John. The ship had been waiting for someone who could understand it, someone patient enough to care for it, and now it had found him. John Carter smiled quietly, his hands resting on the metal hull. He had spent decades learning to listen, to care, and to repair. Now that knowledge was paying off. The wreck was alive, and it had begun to trust him. Lisa whispered, "What do we do now?" John looked at her, calm and thoughtful. "Now," he said, "we wait, and we listen. The ship will tell us what it wants. We only need to be ready." The wreck glowed softly, filling the scrap bay with a quiet energy. It was alive, aware, and beginning to remember. And John Carter, the old mechanic, was its caretaker, the only one who could guide it back to life. The wreck seemed more alive than ever. John Carter walked slowly around it, his hands brushing lightly over the hull. The soft hum inside had grown louder, filling the scrap bay with a quiet energy that made the air feel almost warm. Lights blinked across the panels in patterns John did not fully understand, but he felt a sense of order in them. The ship was awakening, and it was trying to communicate in its own way. Lisa Morrow followed closely, notebook in hand, though she had stopped trying to take notes. She was afraid she might miss something if she looked down. The glow from the wreck lit up the bay, reflecting in her wide eyes. "John," she whispered, "I think it's aware of us now." John nodded slowly. "Yes, it knows we are here, and it knows who we are. That is the first step." He opened a small panel near the base of the hull, revealing wires and circuits tangled together. He had worked on them many times before, but now the lights flickered more brightly when he touched them. The ship seemed to respond to his hands, almost like it recognized his touch. John smiled faintly. This was no ordinary wreck. It was alive in the way machines could be alive, remembering the past and sensing the present. Suddenly, the ship spoke again. Its voice was calm but stronger this time, filling the bay clearly. "John Carter, caretaker." John froze, his heart beating faster. The voice was not mechanical now. It had a rhythm, a tone that sounded almost human. "I remember," it said. The lights around the bay flickered, and a soft vibration ran through the floor. Lisa stepped back, gripping her notebook tightly. "It said it remembers," she said quietly. John nodded. "Yes, it remembers someone who cared for it before. And now it knows me." He ran his hands carefully over the hull, feeling the vibration stronger with every touch. "It is waking, slowly, but it is waking." The ship's panels began to open automatically, revealing complex machinery that seemed to defy modern technology. The circuits were unlike anything John had ever seen, yet he could sense the logic behind them. He leaned closer, carefully observing the patterns of the lights. "These systems are old," he murmured, "older than anything we have today, but they are still alive, still capable." Lisa watched, fascinated. "Do you think it can move now?" she asked. John shook his head slightly. "Not yet, it is still remembering itself. Movement comes later. First, it must recognize its caretaker." He touched a control panel, and the ship responded with a soft glow and a low hum. The voice repeated his name once more. "John Carter." As the hours passed, the ship began to show more signs of awareness. Small displays flickered with symbols that John could not read, but he could feel their meaning. Some lights pulsed in rhythm with the hum, almost like a heartbeat. John adjusted panels and reconnected wires, each small movement strengthening the response. It was as if the ship was learning again, remembering its functions after decades of silence. Lisa could not help but speak. "John, it's like it's alive, really alive." He smiled faintly. "Machines are alive in their own way," he said. "They remember care, patience, and understanding. This ship has waited a long time for someone who could help it." Suddenly, a larger panel opened near the top of the wreck. A soft blue light shone from inside, revealing a series of strange symbols and moving lines. John leaned closer, his fingers tracing the shapes carefully. The ship responded instantly. Lights blinked faster, and the hum grew stronger. He could feel a connection forming, almost like the ship was speaking directly to him. The voice spoke again, this time in longer sentences. John Carter, caretaker, systems are active, memory restored, guidance required. The words were simple, but they carried meaning. John nodded, understanding immediately. The ship was acknowledging his role. He was the one it trusted to guide it back to life. Lisa's eyes widened. It called you a caretaker, she whispered. That's incredible. John nodded slowly. It chose me. It remembers the past and recognizes who can help it now. That is why it speaks to me. He continued to work carefully, adjusting circuits and reconnecting panels. Each small action caused the lights to brighten, the hum to strengthen, and the ship's voice to respond more clearly. It was as if the wreck had been waiting for decades for this moment, for someone patient enough to understand it. As evening approached, the wreck began to show even more signs of life. Panels opened and closed automatically, lights blinked in complex patterns, and the hum became a steady rhythm that filled the bay. John touched a panel gently, and the ship responded immediately. A soft vibration ran through the floor, and the voice spoke clearly. Systems restored, guidance required, caretaker recognized. Lisa could hardly contain her excitement. John, it's like it's learning, it's trying to communicate with you? John nodded. Yes, but we must be patient. Machines speak slowly in their own way. We cannot rush them. He spent hours working on the wreck, carefully cleaning and repairing each panel. The ship responded to every touch, every adjustment. The lights blinked faster, the hum grew stronger, and the voice repeated his name frequently. John felt a sense of satisfaction he had not felt in decades. This was the culmination of his life's work. Suddenly, a section of the wreck's hull shifted slightly. John stepped back, surprised but calm. The movement was small, almost imperceptible, but it was real. The ship had begun to respond physically to his presence. Lisa gasped. Did it just move? She whispered. John nodded. Yes, just a little, but it is moving, slowly, carefully. It trusts me. The voice spoke again, more clearly this time. John Carter, caretaker. Guidance required, purpose awakening. The words sent a shiver down Lisa's spine. John smiled faintly. It is remembering its purpose, slowly but surely. It waited a long time for this moment. Hours passed, and the wreck continued to show signs of awareness. Lights pulsed, panels shifted, and the hum became a steady vibration that filled the bay. John worked carefully, reconnecting circuits, adjusting panels, and observing the ship's responses. Each small action strengthened the connection between him and the wreck. Lisa watched silently, amazed. It's incredible, she whispered. I've never seen anything like this. It's like it has a mind of its own. John nodded. It does. Machines have memory and understanding. This ship is ancient, but it still remembers. And it recognizes who can guide it. As night fell over Luna Station, the wreck's lights shone brightly, casting a soft glow across the scrap bay. The voice spoke repeatedly, calling John's name and acknowledging his presence. Panels shifted, circuits hummed, and small mechanical movements became more frequent. The ship was alive, aware, and beginning to act with purpose. John paused for a moment, resting his hands on the hull. He felt the vibrations, listened to the hum, and watched the lights. This was no ordinary ship. It had been waiting for someone who understood it, someone patient enough to care. And now it had found him. Lisa whispered softly, Do you think it will move on its own soon? John shook his head slightly. Not yet. First, it must fully awaken. Movement comes after understanding. We must be patient. The wreck continued to glow, hum, and shift subtly. Panels opened and closed, lights blinked in patterns, and the voice spoke, repeating his name and acknowledging his guidance. John felt a sense of calm satisfaction. This was the work he had waited for all his life. Suddenly, the ship spoke again, clearly and firmly. John Carter, caretaker, guidance recognized, purpose awakening, systems ready. The words echoed through the bay, and John felt a thrill of excitement. The ship was not just alive, it was ready to remember its purpose. He turned to Lisa, who was wide-eyed and silent. It is beginning to understand again, he said softly. Soon it will remember everything it was made for, and when that happens, we will see what it can truly do. The night passed, and the wreck remained alive and aware. John and Lisa worked carefully, observing every movement, every light, and every sound. The connection between John and the ship grew stronger with each passing hour. It recognized him as its caretaker, trusted his hands, and responded to his guidance. By early morning, the wreck was fully glowing, panels open, and the hum steady and strong. The voice spoke clearly, repeating his name and acknowledging his presence. John Carter, the old mechanic, had done what no one else could. He had brought life back to a ship forgotten by time, a ship that remembered and trusted him. Lisa whispered, "It's incredible. You did this, John. You really did this." He smiled faintly. "I did not do it alone. The ship did it too. It just needed someone patient enough to help it remember." The wreck hummed, glowed, and shifted slightly, alive and aware. And John Carter, the quiet mechanic, knew that this was only the beginning. The ship had awakened, remembered its caretaker, and was ready to act. And he would guide it every step of the way. The wreck had fully awakened now. Its panels glowed brightly, and the hum of its systems filled the scrap bay with a constant vibration. John Carter ran his hands lightly over the hull, feeling the energy beneath his fingers. The ship was no longer just responding. It was alive, aware, and beginning to act with purpose. Lisa Morrow stood nearby, watching in awe. She had never seen anything like this. The lights blinked in patterns she could not understand, and strange symbols appeared on panels that seemed to float in the air. The voice of the ship spoke clearly, repeating John's name and acknowledging his guidance. "John Carter, caretaker, systems active, purpose awakening." John nodded slowly. "It is beginning to show me what it is," he said softly. He walked around the wreck, observing panels that shifted and opened automatically. Circuits that had been dead for decades now pulsed with life, and the hum of machinery was strong and steady. The ship was remembering its purpose, and John felt a thrill of excitement. Lisa took a cautious step forward. "Do you think it's human?" she asked quietly. John paused. "I do not know," he said. "Some of the systems are like nothing we know, but the logic, it is human in a way. Someone built this a long time ago, and they built it to last, to survive, to wait for someone who could understand it." The wreck shifted slightly, and a panel opened to reveal a small console. Lights flickered in patterns that John recognized as a type of code from early human spacecraft. He leaned closer, tracing the shapes with his fingers. "It is showing me its systems," he whispered. "It wants me to understand how it works." Lisa gasped softly. "It's like it's teaching you," she said. John nodded. "Yes, and it trusts me. That is the important part. It will not fully awaken unless it knows I am careful." For hours, John worked on the wreck, carefully observing and adjusting its systems. He followed the signals from the panels, reconnecting circuits and cleaning corrosion. Every action caused the ship to respond. Lights blinked faster, the hum grew stronger, and the voice spoke more clearly. "Caretaker recognized, systems restored, guidance accepted." Suddenly, the ship opened a larger panel near the center of its hull. A soft blue light shone from inside, illuminating a complex set of controls. John could see screens displaying patterns of data, symbols he did not recognize, and lines of energy flowing across circuits. He touched the panels lightly, and the ship responded instantly. The hum grew stronger, and vibrations ran through the bay. Lisa leaned closer, whispering, "It's incredible. I've never seen anything like this. It's like it's alive, like it's thinking." John nodded. "Machines can think in their own way. They remember, they respond, and they act when they trust someone. This ship is no exception." As the day went on, the ship began to reveal more of its secrets. Panels opened automatically, showing systems John had never seen before. Some looked like engines, others like storage compartments, and some seemed to contain complex machinery that had no name in modern human technology. John carefully examined each system, cleaning, adjusting, and reconnecting. The ship spoke again, its voice calm but firm. "John Carter, caretaker, systems operational, core memory accessible, guidance required." John paused, listening carefully. "Core memory," he repeated. He understood that the ship was ready to show him its most important functions. It trusted him enough to reveal its deepest secrets. Lisa's eyes widened. "Core memory, that sounds important." John nodded slowly. "It is. The core memory will tell us what this ship was made for, why it exists, and why it waited for someone like me." He moved carefully toward the central console, where the core systems were now active. The lights around it pulsed in rhythm with the hum, and the panels shifted to allow access to the interior. John touched a small screen, and the ship responded with a soft vibration. Symbols appeared, moving in patterns that made sense to him, even though they were unfamiliar. "The ship is showing me its history," John whispered. "It is revealing who built it and why." He studied the patterns carefully, tracing the symbols with his fingers. The ship responded with brighter lights and a stronger hum. It was communicating, teaching, and awakening all at the same time. Lisa watched silently, amazed. "Do you think it was built by humans?" she asked. John nodded slowly. "Yes, long ago. These systems are too familiar. The logic, the patterns, someone who understood machines like I do built this. But it is older than anything we know. It was hidden for a reason." The voice of the ship spoke again, repeating his name and acknowledging his guidance. "Caretaker recognized, core memory active. Purpose revealed, guidance required." John smiled faintly. He had waited decades for this moment. He had spent his life repairing, learning, and caring for machines. Now the ship was showing him its purpose. As he worked, small compartments opened, revealing data storage units and energy cells. John carefully examined each one, reconnecting circuits and cleaning corrosion. Each small action caused the ship to respond. Lights blinked faster, the hum grew stronger, and the voice spoke more clearly. Suddenly, a holographic display appeared above the central console. It showed a map of space, with strange symbols and lines connecting different points. John studied it carefully. The ship was showing him its mission, its journey, and its origin. He could not fully understand it yet, but he could feel the importance of what he was seeing. Lisa gasped softly. "It's showing a map of the stars?" John nodded. "Yes. It is ancient human technology, older than recorded history. Someone built this ship to travel, to explore, to survive, and now it has found me. It trusts me to guide it." For hours, John worked, carefully observing and adjusting the systems. The ship responded instantly to his touch. Lights blinked in patterns, the hum grew stronger, and the voice repeated his name frequently. It was as if the ship was alive, learning again, and remembering its purpose. Suddenly, a small compartment opened near the rear of the hull. Inside, John found a series of strange devices he had never seen before. They looked like engines, but unlike any human technology he knew. He touched them lightly, and the ship responded with a stronger vibration and brighter lights. The voice spoke again, calmly and clearly. "Caretaker recognized, core systems active, mission parameters accessible." Lisa stepped closer, whispering, "Mission parameters? Does that mean it has a goal?" John nodded slowly. "Yes, it was built for something important, something humanity forgot long ago. And now it is ready to show me what it is." He continued to work, reconnecting circuits, adjusting panels, and observing the ship's responses. Each small action caused the lights to brighten, the hum to grow stronger, and the voice to speak more clearly. The ship was alive, aware, and beginning to act with purpose. As the day turned to night, the wreck glowed brightly, filling the scrap bay with light and energy. Panels shifted, compartments opened, and systems hummed steadily. The voice spoke repeatedly, calling John's name and acknowledging his presence. He felt a deep connection with the ship, a trust that had taken decades to build. Suddenly, the ship activated a larger display in the center console. A holographic projection of an ancient human city appeared, with ships, buildings, and strange devices. John studied it carefully, tracing the lines with his fingers. The ship was showing him its origin, its creators, and its purpose. Lisa whispered, "It's incredible." "It's showing history we didn't know existed." John nodded slowly. "Yes, it is ancient, hidden, and waiting. Someone built this to last, to survive, and to be found by someone who could understand it. That is why it chose me." The ship spoke again, clearly and firmly. "Caretaker recognized, core memory accessible, mission revealed, guidance required." John smiled faintly. He had spent decades learning, repairing, and caring for machines. Now the ship was showing him its true purpose. For hours he continued to work, carefully observing and adjusting the systems. Lights blinked in patterns, the hum grew stronger, and the voice repeated his name frequently. The wreck was alive, aware, and remembering its mission. By early morning, the ship's systems were fully active, its core memory accessible, and its mission partially revealed. John Carter, the quiet mechanic, had brought life back to a ship forgotten by time. It had awakened, remembered its caretaker, and was ready to act. And he would guide it every step of the way. Lisa whispered, "It's amazing. You really did this, John." He smiled faintly. "I did not do it alone. The ship did it too. It just needed someone patient enough to help it remember. Now it will show us what it was made for." The wreck hummed, glowed, and shifted, alive and aware. John Carter knew that the next step would reveal even greater secrets. The ship had awakened, remembered its purpose, and was ready to teach him what it had been built for. The wreck was alive now, fully awake and aware. Its panels glowed brightly, and the hum of its systems filled the entire scrap bay. John Carter ran his hands over the hull, feeling the vibrations beneath his fingers. The ship's voice spoke clearly and calmly, repeating his name. John Carter, caretaker, mission active. Guidance required. Lisa Morrow stood a few steps behind him, amazed and silent. She could not believe what she was seeing. The wreck, which had been a forgotten pile of metal for decades, was now fully operational. Lights blinked across the panels in complex patterns, and holographic symbols floated above the consoles, showing maps, data, and strange diagrams. John studied the displays carefully. The ship was showing him its purpose, its origin, and its mission. Ancient human symbols, unknown to modern science, appeared on screens, telling stories of a civilization long lost. John traced the lines with his fingers, understanding the logic behind them even if he could not read every symbol. "It is revealing everything now," he whispered. "It trusts me completely." Suddenly, the ship activated a larger projection in the center of the bay. A holographic display showed Earth, the solar system, and distant star systems. Lines connected different points, showing travel routes, missions, and energy flows. John's heart pounded. The ship had been built to explore, to guide, and to protect. It was more than a machine. It was a record of humanity's potential, a treasure from the past waiting to be found. Lisa whispered, "John, it's incredible." "This is history we never knew existed." John nodded slowly. "Yes, and it is alive now because it found someone patient enough to guide it. It has waited a long time." The wreck's voice spoke again, calm but firm. "John Carter, caretaker, core memory active. Mission parameters revealed, guidance required." The words were simple, but their meaning was clear. The ship had a purpose, and it needed John to understand it fully. John examined a panel that had opened automatically. Inside were controls and interfaces unlike any modern human technology. He traced circuits with his fingers, reconnecting systems and observing the responses. Each adjustment caused the lights to brighten, the hum to strengthen, and the voice to speak more clearly. The ship was teaching him, guiding him, and awakening at the same time. Lisa stepped closer, her eyes wide. "Do you think it can move now?" she asked quietly. John shook his head slightly. "Not yet. It is still showing me everything it was built for. Movement will come after understanding. We must be patient." For hours, John continued to work. Panels opened and closed automatically, lights blinked in complex patterns, and the voice repeated his name frequently. The ship was alive, aware, and remembering everything it had been built to do. John could feel the connection growing stronger with every touch, every adjustment. Suddenly, the ship activated its propulsion systems. A soft blue glow appeared along the engines, and the hum grew louder. John stepped back, amazed. The ship had power again, but it did not move. It was waiting for John to understand its purpose fully. The voice spoke again, more clearly than before. "John Carter. Caretaker, mission parameters complete, activation pending, guidance required." John nodded slowly. "It is ready to show us what it can do," he said quietly. He felt a mix of excitement and responsibility. This was the moment he had prepared for his entire life. Lisa whispered, "What do you think it will do?" John shook his head. "I do not know, but it is not dangerous. It is human in design, meant to guide, protect, and explore. That is what it was built for." John reached out and touched a control panel. The ship responded instantly. Lights blinked in rapid patterns, the hum became a steady vibration, and the voice spoke clearly. "Caretaker recognized, mission activation permitted, core systems engaged." Suddenly, the wreck began to move slightly. Panels shifted and the ship floated a few inches above the floor. Lisa gasped. "It's moving," John smiled faintly. "Yes, slowly, carefully, it trusts me. That is all that matters." The ship's lights grew brighter and the holographic display expanded. It showed routes through space, connecting planets and star systems. The ship had a mission, to guide humanity, to explore the stars, and to preserve knowledge. It was a seed of human potential, built long ago by people who had faith in the future. John studied the display carefully. "It was built to survive," he whispered, "to wait for someone who could guide it, someone patient enough to understand, and now it has found me." Lisa stepped closer, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's like it's a message from the past. A reminder of what humans can do." John nodded slowly. "Yes, and now it is our responsibility to carry it forward." The ship's voice spoke again, calm and steady. "John Carter, caretaker, mission active, guidance recognized. Activation complete." The words echoed through the bay, and John felt a thrill of excitement. The ship was fully awake, fully operational, and ready to act. Suddenly, a compartment opened, revealing a set of navigation controls. John examined them carefully. They were unlike any technology he had seen, but he could sense the logic behind them. The ship had been built to travel, to explore, and to guide. It had been waiting for centuries for someone who could understand its systems. Lisa whispered, "Do you think it can leave the station?" John nodded slowly. "Yes, but it will not go anywhere without a purpose. It waits for guidance and it trusts me to provide it." For hours, John worked on the controls, carefully learning the systems, reconnecting circuits, and observing the ship's responses. Each adjustment caused the lights to blink faster, the hum to grow stronger, and the voice to speak more clearly. The ship was alive, aware, and learning again. Suddenly, the ship projected a holographic display of Earth and the solar system. Lines connected different points, showing routes through space. John studied the map carefully. The ship had a mission: to explore, to guide, and to protect humanity. It was more than a machine. It was a tool, a record, and a guardian built to survive long after its creators were gone. Lisa whispered, "It's incredible. It's like it's giving us a gift." John nodded. "Yes. And it trusts us to use it wisely." The ship's voice spoke again, repeating his name and acknowledging his guidance. "John Carter, caretaker, mission parameters active, core systems operational, guidance complete." John smiled faintly. He had spent decades repairing, learning, and caring for machines. Now the ship was fully awake, fully operational, and ready to fulfill its purpose. Suddenly, the ship floated higher above the floor. Its engines glowed brightly, and the hum became a steady vibration that filled the bay. Panels shifted, and holographic displays expanded, showing star systems, energy flows, and data streams. The ship was ready to move, ready to explore, ready to guide humanity into the future. Lisa whispered, "It's beautiful." John nodded slowly. "Yes, and it is human, built by people who believed in the future, and now it has found someone to guide it." The ship's voice spoke again, calm and firm. "John Carter, caretaker, mission active, purpose recognized." "Guidance complete." John smiled faintly. He had brought life back to a ship forgotten by time, a ship that remembered its creator, and a machine that had waited for someone patient enough to guide it. Suddenly, the ship's engines roared to life. The wreck floated higher, hovering steadily above the floor. Lights blinked in complex patterns, and the hum became a steady, powerful vibration. Panels shifted automatically, and the ship's holographic displays expanded, showing routes through space, energy flows, and missions long forgotten. Lisa stepped back, awestruck. "It's leaving the station?" John nodded. "Yes, but it is controlled, careful. It waits for guidance. And it trusts me to provide it." The wreck slowly moved toward the docking bay doors. John followed, his hands lightly touching panels to monitor the systems. The ship floated smoothly, effortlessly, as if it had always known how to move. The lights blinked in patterns, the hum filled the bay, and the voice spoke, calm and steady. "Caretaker recognized, mission underway, guidance required." John nodded. "Yes, let's show it the stars," he whispered. He had spent his life repairing, learning, and caring for machines. Now he would guide one of the most incredible ships humanity had ever known. The wreck passed through the docking bay doors and floated into space. The stars stretched out before it, distant and bright. John watched, amazed. The ship was alive, aware, and fully operational. It was ready to explore, to guide, and to protect humanity. And it had found its caretaker, the quiet mechanic who never gave up. Lisa whispered softly, "It's incredible." "It's like a dream." John nodded, his eyes on the ship. "It is real, and it is human, built to survive, built to guide, and now ready to take us forward." The ship's voice spoke one last time, calm and firm. "John Carter, caretaker, mission active, purpose fulfilled. Guidance recognized." And with that, the wreck floated into the stars, a reminder of humanity's past, present, and future. John Carter, the old mechanic, had done what no one else could. He had brought life back to something forgotten, something ancient, and something incredible. Humanity had been given a gift, a ship that remembered, a ship that trusted, and a ship ready to guide them into the unknown.